standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. And if we move forward from there, our next slide is 2 Corinthians 7:9. You must each make up your own mind as to how much you should give. Don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves the person who gives cheerfully, and God will generously provide all you need and plenty left over to share with others. As we move forward, I want you to look at the different levels and attitudes of giving, because you're somewhere in this scale. There's 7 kind of different areas that people think about. So if we go to the next slide over here, these are the attitudes of giving. Number 1, a person tithes obediently. They understand it and they do it. Secondly, they give offerings joyfully. Third, they give reluctantly. Fourth, they would like to and they do some. Fifth, they would like to and they don't. Sixth, they don't think they can and they don't. And the seventh is they refuse and they won't. And everybody has these different levels, and normally you kind of move through different levels. And I was brought up in a Catholic church, and everybody just kind of got $1 and you rolled it all up, and nobody knew whether it was at 5 or 10 or 100. You just kind of threw it in the bucket, and every one of the kids would get one, and maybe some of you can relate to that. And faith is probably the most important thing when it has to do with the attitude of giving. And I like to use an illustration for faith. Little Johnny, every now and then he shows up even in church, and he was pulling a little wagon along, and he pulls his wagon along, and the wheels fell off the wagon. And little Johnny looks up and he says, "Well, I'll be damned." Now a preacher comes walking behind him. He says, "Sonny, boy, that is too strong a language for a little tyke like you." He said, "If that ever happens again," he said, "I just want you to look up and say hallelujah." So little Johnny thinks about it a little bit, and he puts the wheels back in the wagon, and he starts pulling the wagon along again. And the wheels fell off the wagon. And Johnny looks down the wagon, he says, "Well, I'll be," and the preacher walks up behind him. So Johnny looks up and says, "Hallelujah." And the wheels jump back up in the wagon. And the preacher goes, "Well, I'll be damned." The point is, if you're going to preach something, you better believe in it, right? And I think it's important that we believe in the things that we do, and that helps us with our levels. So as we move on, our next slide, a wise person seeks advice. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel." We're going to move forward from that one. Let's look at the challenges today across America. And I can already see I'm going to probably need glasses to see this here. Lon, in my thing, I'm going to give me your glasses. That would be quicker. I've got mine in small print, and it's back behind, so I need to have, these are really cool. Thank you. The average credit card debt among households with balances on their cards is over $15,000. I guess if I turned around, it'd be better. The foreclosure actions have shattered all records. And again, each year, 68 million Americans have no insurance. 43% of American workers say they have less than $10,000 in savings. 45% of workers feel that they're not too confident, or they're not at all confident that they will have enough money to live comfortably through retirement. Nearly 8 in 10, which should be 80%, of workers report that they live paycheck to paycheck to make ends meet. The typical American household made less money last year than the typical household made a full decade ago. How real are those problems? They're problems that everybody faces. Let's move on to the next one. You'll earn a fortune over a lifetime. If you really think about the money that we earn over a lifetime, let's look at someone making $30,000 a year. Over a 40-year career, you're going to make $1.2 million. If you're making $50,000, it's $2 million. And if you're married and your spouse is working, you've got double those numbers. That's a lot of money. But it's not what we make, it's what we keep. It's what we do with that money. And let's go to the next slide. Families are struggling to make ends meet. If you look at 2000, the average family was like $52,000 of income. 2009 is like, $49,000. It hasn't climbed forward from there. The cost of buying things is more and more. You all see that? The cost of groceries, gasoline, cars. If you look at the last 20 years, we had about a 350%, 3.5 times it costs more money today for things than it did 20 years ago. But the wages over that same 20 years have went up about 20%. So if it costs 3.5 times more to buy stuff and we only went up a small percentage of income, we get this widening of the gap. Let's go to the next slide. Chronic consumer debt has become an epidemic in America. Main Street families struggle to make ends meet. And the debts have increased through a difficult economy, and stress has been really compounded by a lot of hardships. Job loss or job cuts, pay cuts, loss of investment income, declining home values, divorce, medical issues. All those things are issues that everybody faces throughout the country. Let's move to the next slide. So how do families deal with the shortfall? For many families, the only thing they had options to, they went to credit cards. Look at 1970, the debt outstanding was only $3.9 billion. 2008, it was up to $989 billion, and you can only imagine it's more here today. If you're under, you look at when did you get a credit card? Your first credit card, if you were under the age of 35, you're like about 20 years old when you got that? And somebody that's 65 years old, you were over 40 years old, when you got that credit card. All right, so let's move forward to the next one. Main Street America is in crisis, and there's a lot of things going on. We're just going to move right to the next slide and skip over that one. I just want to go to this concept, right, what you see here. It's pretty evident, but as debt goes up, the ability for us to save money goes down because money is going to debt. Now, imagine something with me. Anyone here, if you say, what percentage of America has debt? Would you say it's a pretty high percentage? Most of America? What if all your debt payments were wiped out? What if, we went to church tonight, we prayed really hard, and tomorrow you have no more debt payments? How do you feel? Great. Unbelievable, right? Celebration like you can't believe. Well, that's not the scenario, but the fact is that's a goal. That's where we want to be. And so we're going to talk about that in a bit in a second. We also have a savings crisis in America. If we go to the next slide, the personal savings rate has fallen from 10%. People used to save 10% of their income in the 80s. And it's actually fallen to a negative percent. In other words, people buy and spend more than they earn in terms of their debt. And the last time we had a negative percentage savings rate was during the Great Depression. So almost half of all workers, really believe that they're going to be working at 65 and older. All right, so let's move to our next slide. One of our concepts that we want to teach is a concept we just call bypass the middleman. So what happens is most people take their money and then they give it to what we call the big three, which are banks, credit unions, and insurance companies. And what these institutions do is they stamp guaranteed returns on our money. And the reason they guarantee a return on the money is they know they can take our money and make what with it, more or less? More, a lot more. And the difference between what they give us and what they make is considered what? Their profit. Let's look at the profit. I want you to understand the profit. And there's a rule, if we go to the next slide, there's a rule called the Rule of 72. And some of you may know it, have heard it, but I just want to ask here in our audience tonight, we know across America 1 in 100 people have been taught the Rule of 72. And I just want to know from our audience tonight, how many people before you got out of school, in school you learned the Rule of 72. Raise your hand if you learned it in school, the Rule of 72. There's 2 people, okay? And we've got a couple hundred, right? How many people today, you know the Rule of 72, you're using it every day in your life? Raise your hand if you know that rule. And now we have about 7 or 8 people. So again, it's a rule that everything you do is going to be affected by this rule. And so let's put the rule back up there. If we look at that, here's the way the Rule of 72 works. They give Einstein credit for this rule, by the way. I wasn't around when Einstein was there, but they gave him credit. If you take any interest rate that you get for a return on money and you divide it into the number 72, it gives you the number of years it takes money to double when you invest it at that interest rate. As an example, you'll see the 3 different columns. If somebody took 10,000 hours at 3%, 3 goes into 72 24 times. So in that first column, 10,000 in 24 years becomes 20,000. And then 24 years later, that 20,000 becomes 40,000. Now, obviously, the banks aren't paying 3%. They're paying like, a quarter of a percent? So if you got 1%, it'd be 72 years. If you got 0.25%, you'd have to be like Moses and live 400 years for your money to double, right? It doesn't happen too much. Go to 6%, and your money now doubles every 12 years if you can invest or save money at 6%. So the same 10,000, we're brought up to think in school that twice the interest is twice the money, right? If we went to 100 people and said, if you invested 10,000 at the first column at 3%, in 48 years it's 40,000, if we didn't show you the answer, most people would believe that twice the interest is twice the money, but you can already see in 48 years that one time 10,000 becomes 160,000. Then you go over and look at 12%. 10,000 one time invested every 6 years doubles, because 12 goes into 72 6 times, and the same one time 10,000 over the same 48-year period is $2.5 million. Is that incredible? Is that unbelievable to think that the difference of interest is that much money? I remember hearing about this 29 years ago. It blew me away. Not because of having so much money. I didn't have money. We were broke. We were in debt. Is how much money we were giving away. Because where do you get 12% guaranteed? How about credit cards? They get 12 and 15 and 18%. So if someone's got a $10,000 balance, do you realize that that credit card company can make over $2.5 million on one person that carries an average balance of $10,000? So money is either going to work for you or against you. So we say bypass the middleman. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide is called time is money. Well, the sooner we begin to save, the greater amount of growth we're going to have on money. I'm going to give you an example. Someone starts at 25 years old and puts away $100 a month at 10%. At 65 years old, they have $637,000. That's a pretty good amount of money, isn't it? Every $637,000 can probably help out at retirement. But if someone waits till they're 30, they'll have $382,000. It costs them $250,000 to wait 5 years. If they wait till they're 40, it's $133,000. And if you're like Lathan and myself, you'd probably say, well, we got to put away $100,000 to have $100,000. Okay? So the longer we wait, the longer it takes to accumulate money. Let's go to the next slide. One of the places that we have, and it shows a 2009 number, $2,900. In Wisconsin is $3,000. The average tax refund is about $3,000 in the state of Wisconsin. If you think about $3,000, it's $250 a month. Well, if that money was put away, what does that money do? If a person took that tax overpayment and put that money away and got a 10% return, which, by the way, since the 1920s, there's investment, and most people that have 401ks have mutual funds. They're not guaranteed every year, but they've averaged 10% since the 1920s. At a 10% return, $246 a month is $933,000. So if we go to the next slide, one of the ideas on freeing up money is to get your refund up front rather than waiting a year and a half for it. And most people get a tax refund. How many people with your tax refund, you got a thank you letter from Uncle Sam and an interest check? How many people got that? No, he doesn't do that, does he? He sits in the money for a year and a half, and after a year and a half, you get the money with no interest and not even thank you. So our whole thing is get that money and get it up front. You can file, whether you have 2 kids, 1, 3, doesn't matter. Instead of claiming 0 or claiming 1, what you want to do is zero out your taxes. You don't want to owe money at the end of the year, but you don't want to get money. You want to get that money so you can get some return on your money throughout the year and use that money and put it within your budget. It's one of the ideas. We're going to move forward into the next area. The next area is on debt elimination. Now, Proverbs 22:7 says it's the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Let's move forward and give you a couple quick ideas. One of the things that can be done is the restructure. And I think most people know that restructure is possible, but how do you do it? Okay? Well, if someone's got a loan and a mortgage for $100,000, and let's say you were paying 7%, at 3.5%, you would save, a couple $100, in this case, $216 a month. If we have other debt, let's say we have cars or credit cards, installment debt, gas cards, whatever it is, and we consolidate it, we got a car payment, $20,000, a person's got, they're spending $453 a month, they got credit cards of $6,000, they're spending $300 a month, it'll take them like forever to pay those off. If you total that up, that's $753 a month that this household has going towards debt. If that was consolidated and just at a 5% loan, that savings would be $263 a month. So everything that we're doing, everything we're going through in this teaching is about finding ideas to free up money. And there's all kinds of places to do it. It's not just, you've got the bank, you've got the credit unions, but there's other areas that you can do. If you're self-employed, there's places that you can draw money even from your own accounts without taxes. There's all kinds of ideas, and we're not going to get into a bunch of those, but I'm going to move into the next one called debt stacking. Debt stacking is a way to get through and accelerate through debt. Most people take debt, and whatever they get for their payment is what they pay, or they might pay a little bit more. And it takes sometimes literally 25 or 30 years to pay off a credit card if you pay the minimums or just slightly more, and you never use it over that 25 or 30 years you're paying it off. And so what happens is the credit industry, they call them evergreen loans. Man, once they get you, they give you a goal, and when you get close to the goal, you know what they do? They give you a new goal. And that's why credit card debt is increasing to go up, because they keep raising the limits. And then once you were sucked in, they tend to change the rates. Anybody notice that? Okay, rates go up and so on. So if a person takes in the first column, you'll see that this person's got in the first column on the left, they've got 2 credit cards, a car loan, they've actually got 3 credit cards, and a mortgage. They're spending $2,700 a month. Here's the concept of debt stacking. Once a person pays off that first debt, the retail card, the $220, look at the second column, the $220, once it's paid off, you build what we call a debt snowball, and you add it to the next payment. So now you're still paying the same money every month, but that debt will be resolved sooner. And when that debt is paid off, you take the $573 now in that third column, and you apply that to the next bill, and you'll cut through that very quickly. And bottom line is, I'm not spending a lot of time, I'm just giving you the surface. When you use this debt acceleration, instead of taking 30 some years or 23 years to pay off, you'll be totally debt free in 9 years. You would save $214,000 in interest, and once you free up those dollars, that $2,700 that used to go towards debt, if someone's disciplined and they're making this payment and you're used to paying it, keep paying $2,720 a month. When you're out of debt, continue that same amount of commitment you're making, and at retirement, in this case, using a 9% return, at retirement there's $2.4 million. Let's go to the next slide. See, the bottom line is the more debt somebody has, when you resolve it, it might not happen overnight, but when you resolve it, there's all kinds of money. For those of you that say, we're part of some of those statistics you talk about of not having as much money as we want at retirement. Well, when you resolve debt, all of a sudden that money is freed up for you to do the things that you need to do, and you can get to where you want to go. And so we're wanting people to know it's not hopeless. Bottom line is we get a chance to save, a lot of time and a lot of money. Let's move forward. Okay, after a debt stacking, we're going to talk about the next area, credit counseling. Some of you will run across folks, and you may have been in this area when there's issues. There's all kinds of free credit counseling that you can get. Not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's an area, it's a step. If you feel that you know people or you yourself have some areas that you're concerned with, then go to someone that can counsel. And there's free credit counseling that's available out there. Let's move to the next one. Another thing that you hear about is called debt settlement. Now, debt settlement is not right for everybody, but it's right for some people. Because if you run into extenuating circumstances, job loss, health, or something that disability, divorce, all these kind of things, those things happen, and there's debt settlement. What you got to be careful about in debt settlement is going to a company who resolves the debt for you. There's many companies that have raked over America that have run debt settlement, where people paid all kinds of money and never got any help. So there are some debt settlement companies out there, though, that they don't make any money until that debt is resolved. And so you need to really do your research if you're run across somebody in that situation, making sure that the company is very credible and we're doing things in the right way. Let's go to the next one. The next one, bankruptcy. Again, in certain situations, that's an area where people are candidates because they've had a severe situation. In many cases, again, it almost goes hands in hand. I talked to an attorney who specializes in bankruptcy. And they said when you go to court right now, many of the bankruptcies, there's divorce and things that'll happen, and the judge will say, you resolve your debt before we do a divorce, because you're going to be back in my courtroom again. We don't want that. We want to make sure that you resolve those issues, and then you can come back, and if you want to split up, that's what it is. Now, we're not advocating people splitting up, but we're letting you know. Do you know that the average bankruptcy, the difference of going bankrupt or not, is $250 a month? That's the average. It's amazing how it's not a lot of dollars, but it's just, the use of those dollars. Okay, let's go to the next thing. We're going to go to Proverbs 21:20. This has to do with emergency fund. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but the foolish man devours all he has. And so if we move forward in the next slide, 35% of Americans have no money set aside for any kind of financial setback. 50% of households across America have less than $1,000 in assets. Let's move to the next slide. There's 3 accounts that a person wants to have for a rainy day. And there's 3 fundamental accounts. One is an emergency account. And the goal for everyone is to be in a position that you have at least 3 months of income for the unexpected. Your wash machine tears up, the muffler falls off the car, someone slits your tires, the furnace goes on the coldest day of the year here in Green Bay. That happened to us a few years ago. Unbelievable. Pastor Mark's hot tub, blows up on him. All kinds of good stuff. Second area, you want a short-term account. A short-term account is for anything that's happening in the short term. You're going to take a nice family vacation. You're saving up for a different car. You're getting a different home, an upgraded home. That's a short-term account you need to have. And a third account is a wealth-building account, a retirement account, something, a college fund, other long-term goals that a person might have. Those 3 fundamental accounts are something that everybody needs in that area. Let's move forward. Another thing that's important is protecting our family. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Pretty serious talk from 1 Timothy. Let's move forward. There's ways of saving, hundreds and thousands of dollars on insurance, and everybody is challenged to do this. And one is looking at raising deductibles. If you have insurance, if you raise a deductible, a lot of people have $100 or $250 deductible, and something happens to your car, you don't turn it in because your rates will go up. So why pay the extra money? If you have a $500 deductible, as an example, you can save as much as 30%. And get competitive bids. You can save $400 or $1,000 a year and more. I had a brother that actually handled my coverage, and I saved over $1,300. And it wasn't because he wasn't trying. He did the best that he could, but I found a better provider. And I called him up and said, hey, if I can, what would you do if you could save over $1,300 on something, on insurance? And he says, well, I'd switch. I said, I already did. Just wanted to let you know. Thank you. And if you're watching online, sorry, that's just the way it is. But find out how to get refunds from overpayments and get back money you didn't even know that you had. As an example, let me give you an example of this. When we were young, we got caught in this, and many people today still get caught in what's called credit, life, and disability. And it was one of the things that you saw up on the screen. Credit, life, and disability, when someone goes to buy a car or something, some short-term type of loan, the credit area, the bank or the lending institution will offer to put other insurance on. Do you know that Ford and General Motors make more money on the credit, life, and disability and all that coverage that they do than they do in the car business? In every dealership, the car, selling cars is no longer where they're making their money. They'll sell the cars at wholesale, at price, so they can get you through the F&I department, which is the finance and insurance department, to put all these different things on your loan, so that they can make money. That's where their profit centers are. And so there's credit, life, and disability. Credit life means if you die when you have a loan, they'll pay your loan off. So they'll charge you more money. So if you wanted a car, and we had an example, if you go back to that slide, if you bought a car for $20,000, your add-ons, your extra price for 3 things: credit insurance, which is life, and there's credit disability. If you're disabled, they'll make the payment for you. And there's what they call gap insurance. Gap insurance is really the day you drive a car off the lot, the car is worth less money than you paid for it, right? So the gap insurance says if you got in a collision or you had a problem and you totaled out your car, the insurance company's only going to pay you what the car is worth, not what you owe. And there's a gap, so they sell you more insurance to cover the gap. Well, all those things add up. And so instead of getting a loan for $20,000, because of those $3,000 add-ons as an example, you're now paying $23,000 and you're making payments on that $23,000. Very, very unbelievably expensive insurance. And here's the way it works. By law, they can't force you to have it, so you can actually get rid of it. You can actually cancel it and get a refund of that unused portion. So if you had a 5-year loan and you only used 1 year of it, you'd have a 4 years remaining. An example we're using, if it's $600 a year, 5 years is $3,000, so a 4-year refund would be a $2,400 refund. So there's ways you can get money. Let's go to the next slide. The insurance industry does not like you to know this information I'm going to bring forth here. They don't like this even a little bit. And, Pastor Lathan talked about my coaching, and I love coaching. I love challenging where things are at. And I love, and if you know somebody or you've been associated with the industry, I apologize for that association, but I will not apologize for the information I'm going to bring forth here. There's a lot of deception in the industry. Ever drive by and look at their buildings? When you go drive down the road and you're driving down the road and you're going a quarter mile and a half mile, you're in front of the same building, is there a sneaking suspicion that someone's making money? Yeah. And so there's no federal laws that regulate the insurance industry as far as the life insurance industry. And so anybody that's got somebody depending on your income, insurance is necessary. And there's two kinds you can buy. There's term, which term is pure protection. Term is a 4-letter word. The industry doesn't want you to know about it. The insurance, the cash value industry. The second side is cash value. Cash value is an insurance policy that builds up a so-called savings in it. Okay, whether it's whole life, universal life, variable life, anything that builds cash value in it is called cash value insurance. And I'm just going to give you all a little test here. We call it a common sense test. Let's just say there's 4 rules, and Pastor Lathan, and he's going to volunteer for this. He's going to be the head banker over here, and we're going to ask you to put money in his bank. There's 4 rules. The first rule is if you put money in his bank, you're going to lose 100% of everything you give him the first year. I don't know how many takers so far, but hang tight. We're going to cover the rest of the 3 rules. The second rule is if you want your money, it's going to be, if you're investing your money, your return will be somewhere between 1 to 4%, and Pastor Lathan is never going to tell you what it is, but it'll be somewhere inside of that return. If you ever want your money back out of the bank that he's paying you 1 or 2 or maybe as much as 4% on, you've got to borrow your own money from him at 8% until you give it back to him, because he's using it. He enjoys using it. It's kind of nice. And before you all get too excited about this, let's go to the last rule. Pastor Lathan has decided, after seeing so many people pass away and seeing families that fight over money, everybody notice that? If you save money in his bank, he will keep all your money when you pass, so nobody has anything to fight over. Anybody excited about that? Who wants to get their checkbook out and write a check out tonight to Pastor Lathan? Doesn't sound good, does it? Well, see, that's the way insurance works. Those rules, and I'm going to show you real quickly. Let's go to the next slide. What you see on the left-hand side is an insurance area and cash value insurance. John and Mary, let's say they got $75,000 of coverage, and the average cost in the industry for someone over here would be like $114 a month. And those rules, minus 100%, the first year someone buys that kind of product, 100% of the first year premium is a sales charge. Your return, even though the agents and companies will tell you that you're going to get 7 or 8 or 9%, it's just simply not true. The Federal Trade Commission said your average return is 1.3%. You're going to get a lower return. If you ever want money from the policy, because that's how they sell it, to say you got all this money in there, you can borrow it, you're actually borrowing your own money, because 55 cents in your dollar that you pay to the policy is what builds up the cash in the policy. More importantly, the last rule, the one we covered, inside of a cash value policy, you might have $75,000 or $100,000 of coverage, and you build up $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Upon your demise, the insurance company cuts a check for the face amount of that coverage, and they keep that $5,000, that $10,000, that $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. Now, I don't know about you, but that made me mad. I was upset when I found that out. On the right-hand side is what term insurance will do. A person could get, in this case, 3 times more coverage, $250,000 of term insurance on each John and Mary, and they could do it by saving $48 a month. So somebody was presented a choice as a consumer. And they said, would I rather spend $114 a month and $75,000 or have 3 times more coverage and save $48 a month? And then when you take the money, the $48 a month saved, and you save it outside the insurance company in your own savings, at 10% return, at retirement, there's $134,000. So on the left is plan A and the right is plan B. And if somebody had a choice and had the education, the knowledge to know what the choice was, everybody would choose plan B. But we don't get that choice. We don't get that information. The insurance industry has a vested interest in not sharing that with us. Let's go to the next slide. Insurance, really, for those that have a need for insurance, follows what's called the theory of decreasing responsibility. This is like the cross to Dracula. The insurance industry doesn't want you to know this either, because they want people to buy more and more and more as they get older. But here's the way insurance really should work. When somebody is younger, they got young kids over the left, they got high debt and they got a house mortgage, a loss of income would really be devastating to that family. But later on in life, when kids are grown, and hopefully you don't have boomerang kids where you throw them out and they come back, and I know how that works because we've got them. But you got lower debts and your mortgage is paid off. When a person retires, what you need at retirement is retirement income. And when you have enough money, Consumer Reports, Kiplinger and everything else says you're self-insured. If someone is 60, 65 years old, you got $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and you got money, no kids, no debt, no job to protect that income, insurance is now a luxury, no longer a necessity. Let's move to the next one. One of the most important things is a budget. Let's look at Luke 14, 28 to 30 and see what that says. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Let's move forward. You need to create a budget that has the things that that are important to where you're at, and there's all kinds of different areas, and we want to check what you're doing against recommended budgets. And we have all kinds of information in the library and places that you can go to get a recommended budget to see where you're at. Let's move to the next one. And one of the handouts that you were given here was a handout that talks about a number of ideas. I wanted you to be able to walk away and have a resource to kind of take each thing and say, let me check this, let me check it, and see what I'm doing and see if I can save money. Do you realize, actually, most people will save typically $300 to $500 to $800 a month as a family. In actually walking through step by step and looking at the things that are on this list. Like we talked about raising your take-home pay. If you're getting $3,000, there's $250 a month. We talked about restructuring debt. How about the telephone or cell bill? Is there a better plan? How about the cable or satellite or internet? Is there a less expensive option? How about dining out? Can I save money in this area? Can I pack groceries? Can I buy from farmers? Can I use coupons? Clothing, childcare, transportation. I don't have to go through all of them, but you can find ideas to save money. Let's move to the next one. Entertainment. Again, examine everything. Look at where things are at. Put together a budget to kind of help to plan that. Different hobbies that we're working with. Try to set aside a certain amount of dollars and only use those dollars rather than just whatever we want to use. Let's move to the next one. Vacations. Instead of going to Disney World, maybe use Wisconsin Dells. Some people like camping, like camping. I don't care for camping too much, but I used to. When that was the only thing we could afford, it was something to do. I mean, some people, that's just your peace and quiet, and that's great. Saves a lot of money. Let's move forward in the next one here. Giving is another area that we look at in being able to say when you free up dollars, if you get a pay raise, then everybody knows that, hey, I've got more dollars to give. If you free up $300 or $500, $800 a month, it allows you to be able to give more, to be able to do the things that are important to where you're at. So there's all kinds of things that we can do in that area. Let's move forward. I'm going to finish up with 14 things and kind of a review. As a teacher, they taught us to go get a teaching degree that says, You're supposed to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then remind them of what you told them. And I think that's kind of where we're at the end of our program. And number one on this list is to pay God and yourself first. Number two is adjust your lifestyle and priorities. And again, that has to do with that budget. 3, go to work. If the income you have right now, does not take care of where you're at, find a way to make more income. Find a way to do something extra to bring in more income. 4th, avoid large tax refunds. 5th, eliminate low interest savings. Find something that you can get a better return at. 6, avoid the credit trap. Make a decision to get down to one card and freeze it, and when you think you need it, unthaw it, and then if you still think you need it, then maybe you can, but just avoid the credit trap. Number 7, increase your tax deductions to save money. Let's go to the next list here. 8, develop a plan to get out of debt. If you don't have a plan right now, get a plan. Get serious about a plan to get totally out of debt. Number 9, don't buy retail. Number 10, eliminate credit, life, and disability. We talked about that from loans. Look at your loans. A lot of people don't even know what's on your loan until they go get their paperwork out. Number 11, drop PMI on a home. So if you have a home and you don't have 20% equity, you're probably paying $70, $80, $90, $100 and some dollars a month for private mortgage insurance. It does you no good. It does the bank good if you leave the country. When you have 20% equity, you have the right to get rid of that. And you want to drop that, so you got to look at where that's at. Number 12, raise your deductible on insurance. We talked about that. Number 13, examine life insurance plans. I mean, I covered things very quickly, but it's something you need to be able to examine. Number 14, re-examine or create a budget. If you've got a budget, re-examine it and look at it. Let's go to the next one here as we finish up. Where do I go from here? Number 1, decide to start today. Most things procrastination is what kills us all. If you want to get ahead, you got to make decisions. Start right away. Number 2, gain knowledge. Biblical knowledge is the most important knowledge in all our lives that direct everything, including our finances. Financial peace. Dave Ramsey. We have the Crown Financial. The Dave Ramsey program. There's all kinds of stuff that we have in our library, and there's going to be a program here over the next few weeks that's really going to speak into your hearts. It's going to help you a lot as we move ahead in this topic, and just ask for help and advice. And so our last slide that we have for you is right here. Luke 16:11. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of worldly wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you? I mean, it's very important that we do it right. I know we didn't do it